After 25 years behind the decks, I've learned that every DJ has a unique path. I'm DJ Deckard. Welcome to A DJ's Journey, a podcast that explores the stories behind the music with the DJs who shaped our scene. For over 2 decades, Rusty Belichick and Frank Cueto have been crafting music built on groove, soul, and unmistakable funk as All Good Funk Alliance. Today, we're digging into the story behind the music with Rusty. Let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of A DJ's Journey. My name is Deckard, and this episode I am thrilled to have on Rusty B from All Good Funk Alliance. Welcome, Rusty.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Excited to have you on. Excited to talk about your journey. Excited to talk about the funk music, all of that. And let's dive in. So tell me about music for you growing up. When do you remember the first time music grabbed you?
So it's actually my very first memory. And it's sitting in my mother's bedroom, and she had a small TV, and it was when they first played Star Wars on TV. And I remember the soundtrack really captivating me. John Williams, obviously, amazing. Like just the movie was great. Obviously, I mean, Star Wars, everyone loves that movie, but the music and the sound really just captivated me. I was like, what is this? I wanted to know more. And was really into that soundtrack. I loved it. And same thing for Frank, my partner in All Good Funk Alliance. His first musical memory we were talking about was Chariots of Fire. And his dad had a piano at the time, and he learned the melody and would have his sisters bang out on pots and pans to make the beats and do everything. So both our first musical memories are actually a soundtrack, which is pretty interesting. I never knew that about him. It was something I asked recently, and I was like, wow, we both have kind of a similar beginning. And then from there, my sister and mom had a record collection. And I wasn't really captivated by most of what they had, but my sister did have Off the Wall by Michael Jackson. And that was something I just listened to over and over again when I was, in the house listening to music. And that led me to buying my first record, which was Thriller, when that came out. But I was really into that. And then was in and out of. My parents would my mom would listen to Motown. And so I would enjoy the Motown stuff. And I didn't really love Dire Straits and like kind of the rock stuff she liked, but I kind of get it now. Yeah. But, my kind of like you, I was captivated by Duran Duran, early and that kind of stuff.
Early 80s.
Yeah. That's, all that synth pop stuff was like, oh, this is cool. It's different. It's fun. Yeah. Vibey. And then, punk rock for me as well, and Fugazi, Bad Brains, Black Flag, along with just whatever else. I'd listen to The Cure, Depeche Mode was big, New Order,
and, right?
Rap was a big.
What was your first concert you went? Do you remember going to?
The very first concert I ever went to was at a state fair in Oklahoma. That's where I grew up. Was Gerardo. Rico Suave was
Rico Suave.
Was the jam. It wasn't really a concert. It was just kind of a thing at a fairground. But the first one I actually went to that was a big ass concert was my sister dragged me to see the Grateful Dead with Edie Brickell as the opener. And I was like not into that music at all, but Edie Brickell and the New Bohemians actually like rocked it out. It was like, I was like, whoa, I really like this. This is good. And then, to see a Dead show, it's different than listening to them live or their albums, obviously. So I was I was like into it. I was sober. I was straight edge at the time. And I was kind of like offended by all the weed smoke around. Like, I was young. I was like, my sister was a weed head, but I was like not into it at that time. But I enjoyed it. I thought this was really cool. And Jerry Garcia was captivating. And the drummer, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he Mickey Hart, right? He did this whole drum section that was like, oh, this is cool. It's kind of tribal-ish. It's drummy. It's fun. And that was exciting. It was a fun, good concert.
When were you playing any instruments at that point?
No, I've always said I was tone deaf, but I've done some tone deaf experiments, later in life, and I'm not actually tone deaf. I'm just lazy, probably. ADD-ish, did never focus on anything. I did have the Casio keyboard that everyone had with the sampler. You sample your fart or whatever and
The
play it
SK1.
with the keys. Yeah. Yes.
Casio SK1. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. And we actually still have one. My kids played with it when they were younger. But I was more captivated with actually just taking music that was made and doing pause edit tapes and like making my own radio
Right.
shows and making my own edits of music early on with the 2-deck tape players and even recording like a radio up to a tape recorder and just, from the speaker to the microphone kind of jazz and doing it, and then finding out like if you turned it really loud and you got it really close, it kind of distorted. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then you could, I don't know, it was different experiments I did early on, and that really kind of led to my love of sample music and that kind of thing. But I had a unique experience happen when I was younger. I lived with my dad and stepmom at the time. They were Seventh-day Adventists, and they didn't allow you to have secular music or any music that wasn't church music around. And I had a tape player to listen to Bible stories on. And one day they took me to a grocery store and they're like, you got to stay in the car. And I'm like, because I always wanted to go in and pick something, I'm sure annoy them or play the Star Wars video game in the entrance. But I looked on the ground and I saw a tape. And I'm like, went out, scooped that tape up, looked at it. It was Slick Rick, the first Slick Rick album. And it's dirty. It's a dirty album.
Oh, yeah.
I was probably 11, 12 years old. But I took that home and listened to it every night when my parents went to sleep. And was just captivated by the beats and the rap. And I was like, in Oklahoma, you didn't have a lot of rap at that time. So that was like, whoa, I love this. This is what I want to do. Like at that point, I was like, I want to DJ and I want to get my own rapper. I'm moving to New York. Like I had this whole plan in my head. I'm like, I got to do something. And then, of course I ordered there was like a breakdance tape that you got that came with a poster that showed you how to do all the moves. And I wanted to be in a breakdance crew. And I thought I was, I'm like, I'm New York. Like I want to do all this. And no one in Oklahoma was vibing with that. So yeah, I had no one that really connected on that tip. So it was kind of a personal thing that I loved, but yeah, it was interesting.
That's awesome. You had that in common with, having interviewed, a lot of the UK breakbeat guys, and that common story of we need to get some cardboard and go out and do this, and I think it's so funny, but I guess it just shows how influential rap was across the board. Everybody, every white or black kid was just sitting here going, this is so cool. This is kind of life-changing in different ways. So when did you go from the kid in Oklahoma with dreams of New York to moving to the Northeast?
So my mom married my stepdad, Dennis Shepard. He was great. And he was in the Air Force and ended up in Arlington, Virginia, right outside of DC. So we moved there for a while, and I was back and forth. I was going back and forth between DC area and Oklahoma, and my dad also moved into Leander, Texas, next to Austin, Texas, on a horse ranch for a while. So I was kind of going back and forth between them, but that's how I found out about Fugazi and kind of that punk sound. I was getting into skateboarding, and skateboarding had great music on it. Like you'd listen to music, you're like, oh, this is cool. So you went out and kind of dug that music, and there was like Sonic Youth on there, Dinosaur Jr., like all sorts of great stuff. So it was like that kind of influenced me in a big way. And there was hip hop on there, and also like Jackson 5 and just stuff you didn't think that was contextually used in a different way. And you're like, oh, this is great. Like so that was a big influence on me as well.
And when did you end up meeting up with Frank? Was that
so I can get
college
into that.
before then?
Yeah, so we actually met. Well, so I was in the DC area and back and forth, and then eventually ended up moving after I graduated high school I lived on the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. And after I graduated from there, I moved to Newport News, which is like in Southern Virginia. But I was going to Richmond a lot and then going up to DC and Baltimore. And I ended up meeting a girl, and we ended up getting married early on. But we ended up, moving up to DC, and, I was getting into the rave scene there. But the rave scene was kind of like at that point where it was candy ravers and cheesy and like wasn't very funky. So I was more into going to clubs and after hours and things that had more of a funk vibe. Or if I went to the rave, it would be in like the side room where the house and breaks kind of stuff was happening. But there would be, there was a Scott Henry and those guys like incorporated breaks and stuff into their sound. So, the main room sometimes had a DJ that I was into. But anyway, we were both in those same scenes, but never really crossed paths. We knew friends and stuff. And then I went to community college, Nova, shout out to Nova, and got into the music business program. And we both met. We were the only two people in that program that were not heavy metal heads. Like everyone else in there was like heavy metal, and that was their thing. And so we kind of, he was more on the techno trance side. I was more on the hip hop and house side. But when we met, we kind of like, that was kind of how the early All Good Funk Alliance stuff started. It was like a blend of like his really high end trans techno productions with me like, hey, let's slow it down, let's add a break beat, let's add these samples, let's do this and that. And it was a slow formulation of All Good Funk Alliance. He had a project that we named Fixation that we put out on All Good Funk Alliance Records, and no one bought that record. It was we ended up throwing away copies of that record. It wasn't that great. It was okay, but it was just us figuring it all out. And then that's how we eventually started Funk Weapons and started putting out music under that label. And we were super inspired by people like Bronx Dogs, a bunch of the sample-y kind of breaky artists out there. Of course, Cold Cut, and early influences for us were like Orbital, The Orb, Prodigy, all that stuff like fed into our brains, and that's how we kind of came up with that. We wanted to do more of a mid-tempo sound, and it was unfortunate it was never really given a genre within any of the stores. Like they would just kind of shove us into like miscellaneous or hip hop or it never really formed its own. Some stores did. I mean, there was Beat Street up in Canada, which would have like a section with our music, and then of course when Fort Knox 5 came out and Thievery and kind of that, it was pushed into down tempo, but it wasn't really down tempo. But then, as there was a lot of down tempo records that had kind of up tempo tracks on there that were cool, or there was even house tracks that would have like a weird mid tempo down tempo song on the B side. Like when I was big into the first KLF. And even when they were called the Time Lords, and like I had like their single on vinyl, and I was like, this is dope. Like they were, because they were ahead of their time. And of course the Orb did like a couple of ambient albums too as well. They did some weird shit that was just different. Excuse me, but they did some stuff that was different. But yeah, that album blew me away because I was like, they're just mixing in like Elvis on top of like a train sound and some beats, and I'm like, how does this all work? And like that got me in. That was like some of the stuff I started doing at first because I didn't understand beat matching. I still had the big rubber mat on my 1200s, and I didn't know that you're supposed to take that off and put a slip mat underneath that, and like I didn't understand beat matching. I didn't understand anything until I moved into was living with some DJs later on in my career. But that to me was like, oh, I can do this. I can mix in weird sounds and make it work. So that influenced me early on for sure.
So when you and Frank so you started the label first before All Good Funk Alliance as an act then, correct?
No, we were an act before then. We actually had records on Maxi. We had records on a couple of different labels but they were pushing us in the house direction. They wanted house from us. They didn't want this mid-tempo sound. They were like, we would submit all sorts of stuff, and they were like, they would take any of the house stuff, but they're like, we're good on this down-tempo, mid-tempo thing that you guys are doing. But we kind of saw a future in that. Like, we're like, we love house, and like we probably could have created a really good career if we just stuck to house and we're just like, let's not be open format, let's be just house. And like, because we had a name going for it. Maxi Records was kind of popping off at that time. They had Big Muff on there. They had a couple of great artists. Julius Papp, I think, did a release with them. So it was kind of popping in that direction. But we like that, but we also want to do other stuff. And so Funk Weapons was more as that outlet to be like, hey, let's do this other stuff that's not house and see how it goes. The first release, Pete's Sake, blew up. I mean, it's kind of before the Serato thing happened. And so I remember our first check we got from that was like $15,000 range. So it was a lot of money at that time. And we're like, wow, like we can actually, make a career out of this. But, as Electro Clash and Electro House and Blog House came along and changed the whole game with downloads and everything else. So, and not that we were into that, we were both vinyl DJs. We both DJ'd CDs, and then Frank was an early adopter of Serato and a controller. I was like, nah, that shit's whack. I don't want to play on a controller. I don't want to play that. But he showed me, one day he brought it over and he's like, I want you to play on it for a minute before you judge it. And I'm like, okay, like anything, you got to listen to it or understand it before you can say you hate it or don't hate it. And I was instantly like, oh, I'm buying a controller. And it was the best stacks, the early best stacks controllers. But what a great machine those were. And that early Serato stuff was like just clean. I mean, I saw people playing on the SL1 with the vinyl and like struggling to make that all work out. But I heard great sets that way as well.
I'm still looking. Oh, yeah. And I forget what that setup he has, but yeah, the vinyl. But then he's got the little effects unit or whatever on it as well.
Oh yeah.
What was I going to say? So going back though, so how old were you? I guess when so you and Frank were deciding to do the record label. Like, is this like you're going full time into music, or were you how were you deciding this to go down this road for a career, or was it at that point?
Well, I mean, we both wanted it to be a career, but we were both working day jobs, and like I was DC's not a cheap place to live where we were at, but I mean he lived with his mom for a while and was like just making music and doing his thing, going to school. He went to school full time. We both met in college. I dropped out after 2 years. He went on to American University. And then he got his engineering degree from there when he left. And as soon as he got out of school, he jumped into his full-time career right away. And we were both DJing as much as we could, but we were still, like I said, I think we kind of had handcuffs on us a bit because there wasn't enough money to get us both out in places. The same thing happened with Fort Knox 5, where John H was going out and Steve was staying at home more. And it wasn't enough budget to bring both of us out. And so that was always kind of a caveat, like, who's, and we split off more than I think they did. I mean, Frank would go and do all the South American stuff, and he would go up to Canada every once in a while. I did a lot of Canada stuff. We both went to Europe together. We did, a couple different tours, separately. But, sometimes there would be a budget. We did like the 10 Days Off Festival in Belgium, and we played a bunch of gigs in England together. So, but he came home with little money. It was more, it was more just to get it in and do it. But it wasn't like, we're making a ton of money off of it. Right. I did do full-time DJing and production after I had my first kid. And that was like 2009, 2008. I kind of started getting, but that was, my wife at the time was like, I don't want you touring. Like, you need to do corporate gigs and do weddings and stuff like that. So I did both. I did club gigs, a little bit of touring, and then I jumped full on into wedding DJing and corporate DJing for a while, just because it was good money. And it gave me the whole week off with the kids. I would DJ on the weekends and she would work. And so I had, we never had babysitters. We never had nannies. We just watched them. We were able to spend that full time with it. But it was, it was also a sacrifice. I stopped going to Burning Man for those years. We didn't travel. We reduced ourselves down to one car. There was a lot of sacrifices made, but they were great sacrifices. Like just getting, because kids grow fast. Like they, before you know it, they're teenagers and they don't give it, they don't want to hang out with you. But, they were full-time, my love and passion for a while. And it was great. I got to take them to a lot of cool things. I mean, they've met Kellis. They've met Reggie Watts. They met some great artists along the way. Tony from Trouble Funk, just different people. They were just in crazy places with cool opportunities, and were able to get involved and hear great music. I mean, they've heard Rich Medina DJ on the Capitol. They've heard neat things just all through their age. So they actually both have incredible musical ears. I mean, they'll come to me all the time and like, check out this song. I'm like, oh, wow, this is really good. Or there'd be some, artists I've been into for years. And then my daughter would be like, oh, I really like this artist. And I'm like, yeah, I used to play you them.
Yeah.
But, she's developed her own like very unique style. And same with my son doesn't love sharing music with me anymore because, he's like, yeah, you'll turn me off to it because you'll play it so much or you'll get into it.
Well, that's gotta make you like proud papa though, right? Like
it does.
Hearing really that they have good taste, not just that they're interested, but that they have good taste too, have a good ear.
Actually, they both have really good heads on their shoulders. I'm very proud of them, obviously. They both remain drug-free, drink-free, and they're in a crazy, environment up here in Tahoe. I mean, it's not like this clean, mountain living can be rough, and
Yeah.
kids in any school system these days are vaping, doing all the things. I hear all, we're completely honest. I'm completely open about everything. I've told them about all the things. I don't hold anything back because I feel like that's where trouble happens. Like they need to know like what the consequences are and what's out there and what traps. There's a million traps. Being a young person and not knowing what you're doing in this field.
So, and you mentioned, Jason queued up
Yep.
episode 4. He mentioned that you had kind of gotten him into the wedding DJing, and how that definitely helped pay the bills. And speaking as somebody who has a long career in tech, but myself going, my tech career is more of me working with AI and working on my podcast and automating my life than it is making money directly. But I wanted to ask though, and we'll kind of jump back again in a second, but how did that feel going from being at a time where there was a real, explosion of breaks, you know, from Big Beat and into the new school breaks, and then where you guys fit in, and you're sitting on Breaks Poll best artist list.
Yeah.
That's and for me especially, my taste, that's amazing because I have so much reverence and love those artists so much. So what did that feel like as an artist for you to, like you said, making these sacrifices? What was that like at the time?
I mean, at the time, to be quite honest, I was, part of me was like heartbroken because I loved going out and touring and playing as much as I could. But another part of me was just so enamored with these two kids. And we got rid of our TV. We didn't really we had dial up internet. We had really nothing in the house to like, distract me. So I was just core focused on them. And being in DC, we have all the Smithsonian's and all the things you can go to for free and a bunch of parks. So every day it was like I filled it with activity. I got up and I'm like, hey, we're gonna go hit this park. We're gonna go do this thing and check this thing out. And I did get to scratch my itch. I mean, I was playing for 18th Street Lounge. And they would give me a full night. And at first I would just do the end set or I do the opening set. But then I eventually got so into the game with them, and they loved me so much that they would just like, hey, come just handle the back deck all night long or the side room all night long. And that was really unique and fun and like able to stretch all these itches because they were like no top 40s, no anything that's going to bring in the generic crowd, like have fun, experiment. So I wasn't limited to just playing like the Thievery Corporation down tempo sound, and I actually did incorporate that. I would play that early on as people came in, but then we would build up and play like those mashups, those fun stuff from small town DJs. Fort Knox 5 were giving me mashups that they didn't put out that were great. Me and Frank were making just little edits and stuff that we could play inside there. And it was fun to just kind of develop, into a more rounded DJ. And doing weddings really, that will open up your mind to playing top 40s and like, how can I play this music I don't love, but make it fun for myself? So you're creating edits, you're finding cool remixes, you're finding ways to incorporate that stuff, but still have a bit of your personality in there because I didn't want to strip that away. And I was able to scratch that itch, and then I was able to also, I mean, you guys would have me out like once a year or twice a year, and so those parties, those Space Cowboy parties, would be really fun and exciting for me. And then Robbie from Hush now would bring me out
Yeah.
for a bunch of his parties, and he still books me a ton. Like that guy has been
Yeah.
the biggest supporter of me personally over the years. So I have to give a shout out to Robbie. He's been great to me. But then, people that worked under him, like Elijah, who worked under him, we're still good friends. And, just people that I found within those spheres, I kind of, I still love and love playing for them. And yeah, I was able to do that. And then U Street Music Hall would have me, they call me up. I'd be like playing another gig and they'd be like, Bonobo's playing, but he only wants to play for 2 hours. And we have, 4 hours to fill where you come, play and finish for him. And you can't, you get on after a headliner, most people just roll out and they're like, they're done. But I would cue in, I'd get there, listen to what he's playing, and then kind of keep that vibe going. I didn't want to pretend to be him, but I would play what, he was vibing off of and then kind of build from there and keep the crowd. And they're like, once they saw that, they're like, okay, anytime they needed someone to fill in or open up, I opened up for Nightmares on Wax. I opened up for LTJ Bookham. I opened up for Rabbit and the Moon. I mean, just the list is endless because I was known as a great opener and closer because I didn't steal the shine, especially on opening. As you know, back in the day, opening DJs, you didn't play all the biggest tracks. You built it up and then let
Yeah.
that headliner shine. It's a different atmosphere now. I feel like everyone wants to get their 1 hour and bang it out as hard as they can. And I don't know. There's arguments to be made both ways, but I'm kind of old school in that way. I kind of like that build up of the night and like peaks and valleys, right? If it's all a peak, then it kind of gets boring to me.
Yeah. 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 No, that was the first one of the first things I noticed going to WMC in 2006, and that was when really discovered electro coming in. There'd been Electro Clash, and now here was like Steve Lawler was playing all these just dropping bombs. But the lead up to it was, they had, I think it was Clive Henry from Peace Division, and it was just this like really slow burn, for like 2 or 3 hours, and they were like, okay, either he's doing it's very intentional.
Peace Division, though, I forgot all about them. I'm sure I have. They were cool. They made some
Yeah.
dope music. Yeah,
There's some really dope music. Yeah.
yeah.
So
I do want to step back to Winter Music Conference for a second. Me and Frank went there for many years. And that's how we got our first record deal. Our first album came out of Winter Music Conference. We had done a remix for, I'm lunching out on it now, but we did a remix for one of their artists, Sunset Recordings, and then they ended up giving us a full album to do. Sun Vibes was the first remix we did for them with Swanberger. And we ended up working with Swanberger later in life. Yeah, that Sun Vibes Swanberger release blew up. And that led to us getting our first full LP deal. And so those years at Winter Music Conference, this is of course before the internet and you could talk to everyone. That's where you really met everyone and really dived in, and like that was a cool kind of community building. That's really where we first hung out with Fort Knox 5 and got some like one-on-one time with them. And me and John H had a falling out at the last Winter Music Conference we went to, and I didn't talk to him for about a year or two. But it was kind of funny. At the end of that Winter Music Conference, we're like, hey, we want to come back next year. Let's all room together and do something. And Raskin was like, yeah, let's do it. Everyone else, Rob was cool with it. And John H was like, nah, we're okay. We're good. Like, you guys do your thing. We're doing our thing. And he was a little bit egoish at that point. And a little like had a head on him at that point. And I was like, he's whack. But I loved Raskin. I loved Rob, and I love the whole crew. And eventually, we started hanging out at their studio, and they really influenced us on making really clean sounds. They got us from Cubase to Pro Tools, and so and using their same mastering engineer, Holmes Ives, who did all the mastering for Thievery, for us, for Fort Knox back then. So that got squashed over time. But I just want to step back and tell you that small story. As far as Go-Go goes, so Go-Go is a regional sound. It's very percussion heavy, and it was influential. I mean, a ton of rap artists used Go-Go beats as a bed for their music, and "Pump Me Up" was a big song within New York, in the New York scene. But Kid and Play used them. A litany of artists used Go-Go sounds to make their own sound. And the big artists were Rare Essence, Trouble Funk. Brain farting today on Go-Go bands. I have all the vinyl, I should say. But yeah, I have a bunch of their records. But yeah, that sound is just a regional sound from DC, and it was very segregated. Like, if you're a white person, you went to a Go-Go party, you were like one of three maybe. Yeah. And those early Go-Go parties, from the history that I learned, were very like raunchy. Like, people would get naked, people would get crazy, and then there was also a lot of gang activity. So these Go-Go artists would start shouting out the different sets, the different crews, the different gangs, and they would get paid from that. And so the more gangs they shouted out, or the right ones, would make them more money. And so they would put out tapes, shouting out those gangs. Same way as Too Short, I believe, did that later on the West Coast. But yeah, that was, Go-Go is a very secular, sound. And then it got banned in the city. Like, the city was like, no more Go-Go. You can't do Go-Go here. And that only recently got taken away. So now they do Go-Go shows again, but they're different than those earlier vibes. And then, DC, the youth has changed. I mean, there's still a lot of love for Go-Go, but they also got into the trap sound. They got into, the Memphis sound, the South sound, in New York as well. I mean, all the sounds kind of infiltrated the scene. But yeah, it was very influential to me just because it was like percussion heavy, funky, breaky. But another thing I want to mention is also Baltimore Club. Baltimore Club. Have you heard of like DJ Class, DJ Techniques, that stuff?
Yeah.
We were going up to parties in Baltimore, and on the radio they would play that stuff, and the whole way, like we would have it turned up like Baltimore club music the whole way up there. And then
Right.
where Fever happened, that club had Baltimore club nights, and so we'd go on off nights and just go straight into there and listen to Baltimore club music. And that was very, it was a neat because they were very. I mean, there was a lot of it was black people, white people, Spanish, but there was no like they didn't care. Like they just like come in, get partied, get funky with us. It was a BYOB place, so you brought your own beer, you brought your own stuff within there. It was kind of crazy, and then you would bring your beer in, and they would hold it behind the bar, and then you would tip the bartender.
Tip them to get your own beer.
They had a basketball hoop in there, and then they had 2 rooms in that club, so it was kind of interesting. And in the back room, they would always be playing deep soulful house, or they would have some guy playing like cool hip hop, like Mark Farina even played in that back room playing like mushroom jazz stuff. And like,
Yeah.
And that mushroom jazz series before he got into CDs, when he was doing tapes back in the day, was a big, big influence on me getting into break beats and down tempo and instrumental hip hop. And I can't go forward without saying how influential Mark Farina was to me personally. And DJ Spun, his early sets, and DJ Dan's like breakbeat stuff was super like on repeat all the time. And then of course the Wicked crew in general, like those guys just did things differently, and were super influential on us, both Frank and I.
And were you playing? So you're playing at 18th Street Lounge, and I went to DC last year, and I got to visit the new 18th Street Lounge and had a good time. What can you tell me about what did that feel like when it was in the heyday? What was a night out there like?
I mean, it was hit or miss, to be honest. Like that club had a big like turnover rate. Like people would come in, drink, do a thing. Because there's clubs all up and down the street, so you'd get it. You'd have a different crowd every 20 minutes. So you had to really just watch. You had to really learn to read the crowd and see what was popping. That for that next 15 minutes, and then switch it over. There was, if Thievery were actually playing in there, which they rarely did, they were busy touring the world and making music and doing everything else. And they had their studio on I think the 4th floor there. And so every once in a while they would come down and peep down and check out what I was doing, or, kind of say hello for a second, but they weren't really in the community that much. I know Raskin had mixed with them for a bit, and, he did the Thunderball thing, which was really cool. But yeah, we didn't really get to hang out with him much. But Jason Queued Up would come in, and Raskin and John H would be playing. We'd be like, we would check out each other's nights, and that was always fun because you're like, what are they playing? What are they getting into right now? And but yeah, it was cool. It got better. Like it was a big turnover rate, and then this guy, fronting on names right now, house DJ. He'll come to me and play the front room, and he had his like crowd come in, and like they stayed all night long. They were like older black house crowd, and they loved that room. And so that kind of formed like a balance within the club. Like people would kind of, they would come in and they would check out your room. If they liked it, they would hang out. And then it kind of became, once they started doing more of a door charge. And I tell this for any club. I'm like, once you have a door charge, you do retain people better. If you're just free for everyone, then you're free for them to leave as well and come back. But, typically they're going to rotate around if there's other clubs to go to.
Well, you're assigning value to it, which is good.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about a particular song, and it's not just one of my favorite songs, but I put it up there on a Mount Rushmore with any song, and cool. That's "Swing the South."
Oh wow!
And there's a couple lines of inquiry I want to go down here. One is I didn't know how you and Frank work together. You and I haven't never talked about it, and so I went and looked up the credits. I looked up like on who sampled, and I went, who did they sample for this song? And like, nope, no sampling, or at least none that's listed.
Right.
And as far as I could tell in the credits, it's you and Frank. So I was wondering if you could, number one, tell me in particular about that song. And I'll follow up from there. But that song to me is just a chef's kiss, perfection.
I love Swing the South. So let's get into the production side of things and how that all worked out. Frank was obviously a really great engineer, did all the computer work for many years, was really the main driver in the way that Steve Raskin is for Fort Knox 5. I was more the tastemaker DJ, like I like this, I like that, I don't like this. I brought in samples and I would, sample stuff and bring it in for him. And we would usually listen to that and be like, it's good, but it's a sample. So what can we do? Can we replay it? So a lot of stuff we got replayed. We would, he knew guitarists, or he eventually learned how to play everything. He can play guitar, he can play piano, he can play drums. He went to drum lessons for a long time, percussion lessons. And so he can really play almost anything. And so a lot of times we would start with samples and get kind of a bed, and then he would build off of that. And then we got into those sample packs. Like sample packs were a big deal. And while we loved like what like Dynamo Productions were doing, or any of those artists that were sample based, we wanted to be less sample based, like less cut and paste sample stuff, and more stuff that was original. And part of that was like Frank really wanted to have those individualized stems. He didn't like all the background noise that came with everything, or how it was recorded. He wanted it to be recorded better, and was always striving to make a really clean sound, which really resonated with our fans, because they're like, wow, you sound like this, but you're much louder. And so yeah, Swing the South was I gotta say, like 90% Frank. Like he kind of came up with the idea. I came in and I was like, hey, let's add more drum rolls, let's do this, let's do that. And my role was always kind of like editing down things. Like he would have like an 8-minute spread of a song, and I'd be like, this part's great, this part's great, let's kind of condense these down and do something less epic. And I was always into this idea of ABC in songs. So like, some songs just have an A part and then a B part, and they go back to the A and then they go back to the B. I wanted to be like A part, B part, let's have a C section, maybe a D. Like, let's go, let's keep changing it up. And I love that as like, it's more interesting to my ear. I've always appreciated songs that change up a bunch and do different stuff. So that was my push within the group. And on those early records, a lot of it was Frank driving a lot of it, and me coming in and bringing in samples and ideas and change ups. Or also, a lot of it, we did a lot of listening sessions. We would sit down and listen to the records that we got or music that we got for that week and be like, oh, this is inspiring, or, can we do something like that? But yeah, Swing the South to me still is like bumps. Like that song's so cool. And REC as well. I don't know if you know that song, but REC was a song that's kind of got like Rasta vocals and stuff on it. And those actually came from a demo tape that Frank was given while he was down in the islands. He went to some wedding, and like, I think the cab driver like gave him a tape, and it had like, before the song started, he's like saying this random things, and he sampled that from a cassette tape and then used that within REC. So we're always on this search, and we built like, we would build like these kind of sample databases for us to use and figure out. And, and we got, those sample CDs would be like 80% junk. So you'd have to listen to all of it. And then you're like, oh, this is a cool loop, or this is great. But, like I said, I was kind of tone deaf at the time. So the things I would give him, like, were out of key and everything. And he's like, no, this has got to change this key and this key.
Right.
He really taught me a lot about, that stuff, like making sure everything was in key and on time and worked really well. And I eventually got Acid and I also had an ASR X, and I would plug away and like I spent months and months like learning myself how to drive everything. And so, once I eventually learned Pro Tools, and I would go over and he'd be like, get in the driver's seat, drive for a minute. Like, you can't always just sit back here. So I got more and more involved. And, on our last album that we did, there's a couple of songs that are just pretty much straight my songs that he went in and fixed and made better. Or I would do with Matt Dauncey from a neighbor from Canada. And then I'd usually be the one who brought in, like, if we had a guest vocalist, I would, I would create those relationships and then bring them in. And then, that was kind of my role within it. And then, of course, running the record label, pushing the sound, doing all the promotion side of it. He hated doing promotion. He doesn't like, he he didn't want to be on this interview because he doesn't like talking about himself. He's very humble. He loves our history, and he knows that I'll do it right. But when you initially wanted to do SL3, he was like, no, thank you. Like he's done a couple interviews, and he's like, I get nervous about it. I get in my head, So I'm like, I get it. We've been best friends since we were 18 years old, so we really love each other in a brotherly way. I mean, I love that guy to the end of the world. And even if we weren't doing music together, we would still hang out all the time. Just
right.
He's a good person. He's just a great person. I love him.
That's awesome. And that's interesting on the division of labor, how it's changed over time and how you guys operated. And I wanted to share a story also because it's important for my DJing. And I don't think I've never told you this, but so I think this was probably around 2000. I'm kind of guessing here, but I think maybe around 2013, something around there. And in the San Francisco scene here, of which I'm a part, there's a lot of good DJs. There's a lot of breakbeat. There's a lot of people that want to throw down when they get on. We were talking about that with WMC. WMC. For anyone who's never been there, and this is not Ultra Music Festival. This is WMC, which is for the for the industry people. And you will go to nights, and at least the time I was there, it felt like everything was just so. The DJ you saw in the front room or the side room maybe was a big DJ who's usually, used to playing for their own big crowds. But on that night, they were playing a supporting role. And so they're not, as you said, they're not upstaging that, the main room. And so I discovered from my mentor and best friend, Mitch Bate, DJ MB, shout out to Mitch. He's telling me about coming back from this trip to Whistler, and he knew some of the same people you would know from up there too, like Matt the Alien and
what a legend. Matt the Alien.
Yeah, I mean the Whistler scene was just sick to go up there from Seattle and drop in, and whether we were playing or just hanging out, but. Anyway, long story short is he comes back and tells me, dude, I got this trove of songs, and it's not quite big beat, but it's kind of happy, and it's got a break beat to it, and it's like somewhere in between. And he was telling me how for him, it just kind of opened up this new avenue, kind of like, extending your music map. And so he sends me these songs. It ends up being almost all your guys' stuff, all Good Funk Alliance tunes.
Oh wow, that's awesome!
And that was my real, and I probably had heard some, I probably heard it here and there,
right?
But it was at a time where I was tasked with playing a friend's birthday in the daytime. He's very specifically wanted a non-nighttime gig, and so I'm kind of sitting there at that time going like, oh, I'm not really a house DJ, and I play a lot more house now, but at the time I was really like, where am I going with this? And your music opened up. It's not down tempo. It's like you said, it's hard to classify because it doesn't conform to a lot of, just a house genre or whatever, but you could play Swing the South in that house set, no problem. Right.
Right.
So the light shining from above moment was when here I am playing Atmosphere to open this birthday party. And yet I've got like 6 women that are dancing. And it was this warm, hooky, kind of funky, soulful sound. And it just, the light turned on. I was like, okay, I don't need to be the guy that's always, like playing the biggest, hardest song or whatever. There's this whole other avenue. And that really opened up to me. And I might be wrong off on my years there, but like Ali B with his Shit series, that was another one where I just went like, that's where I understood the term new funk. So you were, thank you for helping expand my music horizons on the DJ world, because that really informed to this day how I stopped from thinking of myself as a prime time, this DJ, to I'm going to play whatever. Like, hey, what vibe do I want to help create with this room? Let me read the room and we're going to create this vibe together. So
that's really awesome.
Thank you.
I love that. That means a lot. And that's one of the theories I've always had is play for the women in the room and then everyone else will follow.
Yeah.
And like I've
Yeah.
always focused on like, okay, are these girls vibing off of this? And if I can get them happy and they're into it, then boom, you got everyone else. I've never really played for the macho guys and like, let's play really heavy stuff. I'm like, I mean, you've heard me many times. I would describe myself as more vibey than anything else. Like, and I'm still that way. I still like, I'm playing a party this Saturday and I'm like, what do I want to play? And I'm like, I put together this banging set because there's a bunch of other DJs that are kind of banging there. And I'm like, I'm not loving it. Like, I'm like, I'll have banging sections, but I'm like, I also want to like break it down and play like, something at, 105 beats per minute. And like bringing out those ways of transition between all that has always been like kind of my strong suit. I've gotten a lot of props for being able to like switch up from this sound to that sound and like keep the dance floor going. Cause a lot of times you can slow down into a rap song and people are like, going to the bar. Like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
If you can kind of keep that energy and keep that vibe and, and I've always believed in like dancing behind the decks, enjoying it myself. Like I get into it. Like I don't just sit there and, that's not everyone's vibe, but that's always been kind of like what I'm about is like, I came from the dancer side first. I was a raver. I got into clubs early on. I was going to gay clubs when I was 14, 15, just because I wanted to hear, that was my, industrial era. And of course, they would play Susie and the Banshees. They'd play all sorts of stuff. And like,
Yeah.
that was like super influential to me is like that sound.
Little Nights Red, Front 242.
Yeah. Front 242 is big and Skinny Puppy. All that stuff I liked. I met Chadwick, a guy in Richmond who was running his own night at a gay bar, and I would carry his records in and just watch him DJ and kind of figured out how to beat match from him. And then he gave me a whole crate of records, but it was like all the records he had given me weren't house records. They were all the records that were mid-tempo, down-tempo things that he wasn't into. So that also influenced me as well, because that's the only records I had. I only had mid-tempo, down-tempo records. So I got known as an after-hours DJ early on because I would play these after-hours. But I would mix in My Bloody Valentine. I would play the Orb. I would play, I would play the Prodigy, but slow them way down. My whole thing for a while was playing house music, but I would play it all in -8. Because I was like, I want to hear everything at like 114, 118, and like, I like it kind of slugged out.
You were, you were one of those guys, like in the local DJ scene. It'd probably be like this guy, this Rusty guy. He's like, he doesn't play anything quite how anyone else plays it.
Right. Yeah, it was good. It built me up, and then eventually got some residencies built off of that, and got some cool opportunities from it. But nothing really popped until I found Frank, and we got records out. I mean, as you know, having productions out for any DJ or anyone wanting to get into this game is a big part of it now. It's even bigger than it used to be. And if you do really want to do this, I highly suggest just start digging around. Just start getting some cheap. You can get free plugins. You can get free equipment, free software, and just start copying the music that you like. Like try to make the song that you're into right now. Try to remake it. See how far you get. That's the best thing is like imitate for a minute and then start building your own style from there.
I'm going to jump for a moment because I want to go. I think this is where we first met. I believe was on the dance floor at Funky Town at Burning Man.
Hell yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I think that's where we first met. So I wanted to ask you, what is your personal connection there? For those that don't know, well, actually, I'll let you tell since you're closer to the Funky Town tribe. But maybe you can tell me when you first went there and kind of how you became part of that crew.
So anyway, I started to go to Burning Man. God, it was like maybe 2006, 2007, early on, and there wasn't really those big sound systems. There was like a trance tent on one end of it. I believe Green Gorilla Lounge were just playing out of the back of a truck. And there was like I forgot what they were called. They were like a small crew, and they did a party right on, right where the main center is. Is that called the Esplanade? Or it's like right in the center of everything. But they did this mobile party that they set up, and they had me DJ it the second year I went. And they had like these CDJs that weren't CDJs. They were like, you press the button and it played like a half a second later. And the mixer was all janked up and it was terrible. I was like, there's no way I was playing CDs, but I didn't think I would actually be able to play on it. And I was like seriously worried. And I got on it, and like within 30 minutes, like I mean, it's a crazy crowd. Everyone's around, and I'm like, wow, like this is popping off. And my friends are like, there's a Czechoslovakian crew filming you. So they're filming me. I'm like, I'm blown away. I'm like, this is kind of wild. This is really cool. It was my first party I played at Burning Man. And, from there, like, people had heard of me. I came back the next year. They're like, we'll have you at Opulent Temple. We'll have you here. Like me and Frank went together that next year, like played a ton of gigs. And someone from Funky Town had talked to John H. and Steve, and were like, "Hey, you should really come over and play with us." And that's where I first met you. I first met Ali B. And Brett Klein was a big fan of ours.
Yeah.
And he got us into there. He was part of the Funky Town crew. And so that was my first party with them. And I was like, wow, these guys are cool. It's a different sound. We're able to do something different on the play. I felt like everything was so, it was so hard and heavy, or it was dubsteppy later on. But that was a really, really fun party. Another great party there was I played with Lauren Bass Nectar before he was really known as Bass Nectar. And we played this like weird art car out in the middle of Playa before there was a billion art cars, and like he crushed it. He played like really, I mean, sad what happened with him later on, but at that point he was a nice guy from all I knew. And played everything. Like he played Another One Bites the Dust. He played some crazy rap song. He played a song from us. Like he was a really eclectic DJ before the dubstep. And I mean, I really feel like that whole sound is based off of Tipper. I think Tipper kind of invented that vibe and glitch hop, but like kind of incorporating drum and bass sounds to slower tempos. And I think he was a big influence on that sound and that direction before I went full on dubstep.
For sure.
Back to Funky Town, those guys were great, and it was great meeting you. I remember hearing your set and being like, "Oh, this is different. This is cool." Like he's not playing the generic-y kind of Burning Man sound.
Did you end up? What did you take away from Burning Man as far as I mean, there's a lot to potentially take away, but as a producer or DJ, did you kind of go back from like a week at Burning Man and find yourself reinvigorated, hearing new sounds, anything, or was it just a great place to go and commune and party and get the music?
That's a good question. I like that question. I was always invigorated when I got back, but it usually wasn't from like what I heard. It was more of like the vibe of everything, in the way that like people really let themselves go and dance. And it's part of the reason why I moved to Tahoe, because it's close to Burning Man. Our parties here are very Burning Man-ish. Same with San Francisco. I mean, I feel like it kind of extends amongst the Northern California vibes. I mean, even if you go up to Humboldt, those people get down. Like they get down and they dress up. Like I love that whole dress up aspect of it, which I'd never really seen. DC, like, we went from like, and I'm sure you talked to Raskin, like people were wearing suits. You had to wear suits and hard shoes to get into clubs for a minute. They didn't allow sportswear. God forbid you put on a baseball hat. Like, no, you're not kidding. But, it got better over time. But that's what I loved about Whistler. Like the first time I went up there, like everyone was dressed up. And I met this guy, Chili Tom. Respect to Chili Tom. He's passed away. He's a great artist, great DJ, and was a big part of that scene. But he had this thing called the Tickle Trump, and it was a Canadian thing. You opened the Tickle Trump, you had to wear something. You had to put on a boa and put a bra on over your stuff, like and it's more about like not taking yourself seriously, right? And like Burning Man's about that too. Is like, don't take yourself so seriously. It's fun. Like let's go have a fun time. Let's be silly. Let's be irreverent. I mean, people get on bullhorns and yell all kinds of crazy stuff. I got into the bullhorn thing for a minute.
You did.
Oh yeah, like my camp would have like a bullhorn, and I would be on that thing yelling at people, being snarky. Like it's I've changed who I am at this point. I don't love making fun of people, but I would make fun of people just because I thought it was funny. But it was in jest.
What I
like Evan Everyman from I'm sure you've maybe met him before, but he's like a comedian, DJ, actor. He was in the Barbie movie as a cop.
Okay.
Like every time I see him, he's like breaking me down like 4 different ways, telling me my pants are wrong, or something's wrong, or my set sucked or something. He just always razzing me, and I just like I love it. I'm like, thank you. Yeah. It reminds me of the East Coast. Because East Coast, like we don't, still to this day, like, last time I was there, I was hanging out with some of my friends, and they're like, you know what, we love you, but can you please like not talk with your mouth full of food? You've done this for years. We've never said anything, but it's gross. And so it's like, okay, noted. I can be like let me cover my mouth when I'm going to say something for 10 seconds,
Yeah.
So I mean, I love that kind of raw honesty, and
Oh yeah.
they would check me. I would, if I was messing up and like partying too much or whatever, I would be like, hey buddy, like cool out, like why don't we do something different? And be like, okay, cool. I appreciate that. Where I don't
Yeah.
really see that happen so much. I see people kind of like mess up within the scene, and it's kind of forgiven in weird ways. And back east, it's not tolerated. Like if someone's
Right.
creeping or being weird within the scene, they get ejected. There's
Yeah.
people within our friend group that are no longer in it because they displayed bad behaviors.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, there's kind of a vetting with the Burning Man camps too, which is, you've got
Absolutely.
more people to kind of watch your back, which is good. I have a question for you, and it has to do with you playing for opening for James Brown.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
And what I'm really curious about, and so we mentioned Thievery Corp, and I'm good friends with Trapper, who's their tour manager. So I've spent a fair amount of time, going to their shows and just hanging out and just catching the sound checks and like getting to see Ziggy Marley, watching him sing his dad's songs and his kids and wife just sitting in the first row at sound check. I'm just like,
Right.
I can't film this. This is so amazing. All I can do is just enjoy this. So when I heard you played for James Brown, I thought a couple things. One was, do you have any good green room? And the second one, well, go for that one first.
Well, yeah, let's just step back how it all happened. Me and Frank, this is a vinyl era. We're playing vinyl everywhere we go. And there was a DJ named Lovegrove in the Baltimore DC scene. And he was the head curator of CloudWatch, and they did these side rooms at all the raves. So while everyone was bringing in the big rave trance DJs, they were bringing in DJ Food early on. They were bringing in like a lot of Cold Cut. They were bringing in Orb. They were bringing in a bunch of people early on that were not main room guys, and like kind of trip hop, that kind of vibe. And so they vibed on us for being, not, formulaic at that point. And so I would play, we were just playing different like events for them, but usually opening up, right? Or playing a side room. And then when it came to James Brown, they're like, he was like, I couldn't think of anyone else. First off, you guys are called All Good Funk Alliance.
Yeah.
Second, you've opened up for many of our things. We know that you can kill it. And so we were given that opportunity. We were super stoked. And the way it was set up, I can't remember what the club was called. It was in Baltimore, but there was the stage. And then above the stage was this little booth that had windows on each side. So we could look right down upon the stage and see like we see everything right there, and then see the crowd. And vinyl era. So I was in the pre-planning sets. Like I learned early on. I played with A Skills, and I saw him play at the Hi-Fi Club, and he crushed it with like playing, just the best set I've ever heard. And I'm like, how do you do this? Like, how are you so good? And he's like, I plan my sets. I practice. I'm like, I practice, but I don't plan. So I'm like, let me start planning. And so that was a big cue to me to like planning. If you really work your set out right, and the vibe, you can go off your plan obviously if it's not working out right, but it's good to have an idea of what you want to do. So I had a basic idea structured out, and it included a couple of like classic hip hop tracks and stuff like that. And we get there, and as soon as we get on to play, the main guy comes up and he's like, "No hip hop, no James Brown." He gave me a couple of like no Lynn Collins, like a couple of things, and I was like, sorry, like I'm just gonna play what we play. And so we proceeded to play our set, and it went off. Like they loved us. But the whole thing with James Brown is, and this is like how he does his thing, is he doesn't go in the green room. He has his band show up, they set up everything, they start playing, and they'll play for like 45 minutes, 30 minutes. They play for a minute. He'll show up in a limo, open the door of the limo, open to the door. We watched this whole thing happen. He comes into the hallway. He gets to the hallway. He stands there. Manager says something. He's given a briefcase. He opens the briefcase. It's full of cash, lots and lots of cash. He closes the briefcase, brings it back out to the limo, hands it to his girlfriend or wife at the time. I think it was his final girl. I mean, she died shortly after this. Hands that off, goes straight to the stage. No stopping from nothing. Gets on the stage, busts out the splits, gets into like every song you can imagine, kills it. He's directing the guys, doing everything. At the end of his show, he bows right back out to the limo, opened up, out of there, gone. And this is like commonplace. That's how James Brown does it. So no, we did not get to meet James Brown, but we did get to meet some of the bandmates at the time.
Man.
And his manager came up to us and was like, wow, that set was great. You guys were amazing. If we come back, we want you guys to open. Like, it made us really feel good. I mean, he didn't have to do that. So that was, it was a really special time. We had all our friends. Like, there was a section in that booth where your friends could actually come up and hang out. So halfway through, one of our friends dumped a whole cup of beer into the records. But everyone was back there with towels, and they're sitting there wiping the records off. And I'm like, okay, I need this one next, and make sure it's clean. So that was it's kind of, I've told this to a couple of people. I'm like, when you have random accidents or weird things happen at a gig, sometimes it makes it better. Like, it's weird. I don't know, what it is about that. You have an early night hiccup with the sound, and then, somehow it magically gets better, and you're like, oh, this is so good. So I don't know. There's little mistakes and things.
Throwing out of our comfort zone sometimes. As an artist, it's a good thing. Did you and Frank, did you have a moment before you went out there? Do you remember? Did you guys say anything to each other?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. We both looked at each other like, wow, this is really special. Like, let's soak this in and enjoy it. And I was always the main DJ. So Frank was like, I'm nervous. You start out, you lead. I will jump in once I get less nervous. So, that was kind of the discussion we had. And then I pretty much planned the set, but he went in and like added records in that that fit in the vibe and would work. And he had a great collection of just classic funk and disco and soul. Like, he would go out with Dr. DeLay, and they would go record shopping, and he still has an insane collection of like funky breaks that were, that we still like, we'll be like, oh yeah, I remember this Roy Ayers Coffee, the soundtrack. Like, I just rediscovered it recently, and he's like, oh yeah, I had that record, I played it many times. I'm like, yes, I remember now. But one of our big things is like, they would do these park parties in DC, and we would show up, and all the other guys would be playing house, and knowing, just playing house in this park, no one cares. Me and Frank would get on and start playing classic funk and soul. And next thing you know, all these people just fill in, old black people, homeless people, everything, just, loving what we were doing. So we were always like kind of the headliners of those things. Like, they would have us play last, or, when they needed it to be, the best time for it to get going. But yeah, so we used all that knowledge within those kind of sets for sure.
Nice. And then jumping to where you are today, I still see you rocking it out. I love your clips on Instagram. I know you're still DJing. Are you and Frank still making music as of now together?
That's a great question. Not so much anymore. I mean, we've done a couple of edits and remixes for different artists, but as far as the All Good Funk Alliance name, it's more of our DJ name now. I mean, we're still gonna, who knows? Things change. There's times that we've taken couple of years off and then came back and did a full EP or an album. But he's focused on his side project, which is Vested Soul. I highly suggest anyone that likes All Good Funk Alliance check out Vested Soul. His stuff is really good. He's gotten really great into programming. And do you know Oliver, DJ U-Turn, that stuff? And their music production is very French touchy, but just amazing, like full sound, really rich chords and melodies, and like just a beautiful sound. And Frank's kind of taken on that ideas, but more incorporated with like a bit more funky percussion, I would say, and a bit deeper. Not as like main roomish, but very, very cool. Like, I love this Vested Soul stuff. And I'm still like, I'm pretty involved with him when he does a release. Like, before he puts it out, he'll send it over to me like, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I'll send back a list of notes. So like, what I think he should do differently or how he should change it up. And he takes some notes, other notes, he's like, no, thank you. I'm just going to do this. and 9 times out of 10, he's right on. Like, I listen to his stuff. I'm like, oh, this is so good. I love it. And I'm not just saying this because I'm his friend and partner. I mean, if I didn't know the guy, I would be buying all those songs. I'm doing a project called Late Night Workshop, which is like sample based edits, kind of fun stuff. I also have a artist I work with, and she's a great musician, Irina, and we do some stuff together. I've kind of put it on pause for a minute because I just haven't been influenced in that side of things. I kind of got into doing these Instagram videos and doing mashups once the stems came out for Serato and were really good,
Yeah.
and starting my own Patreon. So I have a bunch of stuff that's on my Patreon that I haven't put out to the world. And I even have like some solo projects that I've done that I'm like, oh, I'll put out, but they're sample based. I mean, they're not completely 100%, me. I mean, I do have a couple of 100% me things that I've done, but I'm not like, I don't know. I feel weird about putting it out. I'll probably get there one day. I mean, some of it's been put out randomly here and there, but as far as All Good Funk Lines, though, we did do a Paul Sitter remix, which was really dope. It was with Andy from what am I thinking of? I can't think of her name now. Oh, anyway, he's Ugly Duckling. So Ugly Duckling
Yeah.
is a rap group out of LA, and
Yeah.
Andy has moved to England. He works with the Allergies. If you've heard of the Allergies.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And we have a great relationship with Jalapeno Records. I put out some AGFA stuff that was just me and Neighbor, but it was under the AGFA name with Neighbor.
Right. Right. Yeah.
He did a whole
Yeah.
mix for Jalapeno as well.
Yeah. Jalapeno. Great funky stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And we got some Ski Whiff as well from going to England. What I really did enjoy is, though, the next night we played with, we opened up for Global Communications, Jedi Knights. And that club was dope, like really cool. Those guys were great, like amazing set. And then down below that club was a two-step early, UK garage night. And, I snuck down there, and Franco was like upstairs. It was like more dressed up upstairs. Downstairs was gully. Like everyone's wearing Adidas wear and everything else. And I immediately was like, I love this. This is cool. Like whatever's happening within this scene. So I never really got in. I mean, now I'm incorporating it. All of us are incorporating UK right now. I feel like, I mean, it's an influence, but I was influenced from it early on. But I took that influence and kind of helped start the whole ghetto funk thing. I was talking.
Right.
Featurecast came and stayed with me, and I was like, "You should take these slower mid tempo sounds and incorporate drum and bass," because he was a drum and bass DJ as well. And so he took those ideas and he sent me some stuff, and that was some of the early Funk Weapon stuff was ghetto funk. We did Baffin Island Beat Brigade, which is another label, and that had some ghetto funk on it. And then the ghetto funk label started, and they kind of took over all those artists and doing things, but they were much more managed than we were. I wasn't great at like doing the accounting side of it and everything. I ended up giving all those artists all their publishing, all their everything, so they could re-release it on their own and make their own money off of it. Because I wasn't great at that, and I actually pulled a lot of those songs off streaming. There's the vinyl out there, of course, but not a lot of money was made from it.
So do you have? And I dearly love that era.
Ghetto.
And it was interesting to me as being. So to me, it just totally made sense for multiple reasons. One was it was a change up. It's not like the other breaks disappeared. The other breaks were all still there. But if you wanted to go down to like 110, 115, 105 even, but it felt faster. And it was kind of like Big Beat. It was so very sample heavy, which I had zero problem with. I loved it.
Right.
And you mentioned Featurecast, who was absolutely, for a stretch there, was just, and his productions were so amazing. His ability to utilize the original and then turn it into something else completely. Yeah, you kind of took me back there to a little time travel there for a few years.
To me, he's the king of ghetto funk. I mean, and then he was just such a genuine, great person. I mean, he stayed with me many times. I stayed with him. He's sober, straight edge, like just focused on music. He was a great influence on that side of it. And then just as a DJ, did you ever see him DJ?
I never have.
He could scratch. He was like a DMC DJ, but didn't over scratch, like just the right amount. In the same way Crafty Cuts or A-Skills does. But to me, he was just like, he was the first person I ever heard do that whole, I'm going to play all this and then drum and bass at the end. Now it seems like, Sticky Buds, all those guys do that. He did that way before any of them. Like he went to Shangri-La and influenced a whole crop of people.
I will put Matt the Alien up there in that.
Absolutely.
I watched
let's
Matt.
Give Matt the Alien his flowers. That guy.
Matt Whistler, he was throwing down hip hop.
Oh man.
And just even just in the middle, like it was like at the break or something, and it just dropped into drum and bass. Is that Tommy Africa's? the entire place without skipping a beat starts just like pogoing up and down, and I'm just kind of like looking around just going, what the hell just happened? And that was my like, okay, all right, Matt the Alien is going to throw, everything but the kitchen sink in there and do it with style and panache.
Oh, just what a legend. And then Vinyl Richie, Foxy
Oh yeah.
Moron.
Yeah.
Vinyl Richie, like that guy. I mean, his Wicked Lester project. I put out a Wicked Lester song, but yeah, I mean, I love that guy. Scotty's so cool, and like
Yeah.
I'm like, who's mixing? I mean, well before I heard DJ AM doing it, he was mixing like rock with funk and like all sorts of stuff
And he was doing it on 45s.
Yeah, and he still does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he put out a 45 mix recently of all rave classics. I'm like, I didn't know, Too Bad Mice had a 45 out, but he put a video out recently, and it's just like him scrolling through all his 45s, his rave 45s. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? All this is on 45, and you have all of them, and he's got it all BPM'd and keyed out too. Like
Right.
he's got the little sticker on there. I'm like, Vinyl Richie, like what a G! Like that guy is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and from what I've watched a bunch of your podcasts, like that was a big influence on you going up there and like seeing those.
Yeah.
And I can hear that in your sound, which is like you're not like you play breaks, but you don't just play like I don't know. I feel like sometimes it can be plateauish and like just and you have a bit of peaks and valleys, which I feel is probably influenced from those years.
There was a little bit of like a party DJs, like I kind of had my nose in the air a little bit going like, I'm going to take you on a journey, not like these guys that are just playing one song. And then about 2, 3, 4 years later, whatever. And, and this is partially, again, when I discovered your music and went with the ability to change on the fly.
Right.
Yeah. That Whistler, not only was it just super fun, but yeah, it actually helped me later on when I digested what they were actually doing and went, oh, okay, these guys are really badass. And Czech, I loved the stuff he was doing there.
Shout out to Czech, man. What a sick DJ. Like so fun. Yeah. And it just his like whole vibe. Like he's like fun, just fun guy to be around and hang out with. Like, and I remember spending time with Stinkmit, Kate Modee, she's like one of the rappers for them, but like they were, I did a couple parties with her and she would come out and just rip on the mic and just destroy it and take it to the next level. And then, yeah, it was just like, there's so many in that crew that ended up like going really big places. You're like, wow, like it wasn't just a small insular scene. Like, and they're still innovating. I mean, still killing it.
Yeah. Talented.
I mean, look at what she's done with Bass Coast and all, just
well, like the ski tour guys.
So
what else?
I was into their stuff. Tim and Dave sent me Dave was doing stuff on his own, and those are like I still play some of those songs, like the Walk on the Wild Side thing they did, and some of the stuff they did before they were like Ski Tour.
Yeah, pre Ski Tour. Yeah.
Oh, good. I mean, Ski Tour. Don't get me wrong. As far as Tech House goes, like I love what they do. Like I'll hear their sets. And I'm like, this is fun. Neon Steve is another guy that's from that area now that's super good. Like his presentations mixes are to be looked forward to and something I dig into and like will be like, oh, I haven't heard of this artist. Let me steal that. So yeah, I mean, I'm still influenced by mixes and DJs. Constantly. I'm constantly on the dig. I mean, I told someone this recently. I was like, I live by the ABD, always be digging policy. Like I'm always digging. Like I'm looking on YouTube. I'm in Beatport. I play records. I have vinyl. I'm still buying records and hitting thrift stores. And last night I was going through records and I'm like, oh, I totally forgot about this Troublemaker song or just weird things that you put in your record collection and totally spaced out on over time. So.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be heading to New York in a couple of weeks, and I'm excited to. I've already I looked up. I'm like, okay, I got to research some record stores around West Village where I'm going to be. So I definitely do a little digging while I'm there.
Oh, it's well. I mean, the thing is like there's their prices. I mean, some of those stores, those prices are crazy, but there's stuff I've never seen before or after that. Like I was like, you know what, I'm going to pay up for the what I call the proto garage era, after disco, before house. There's a whole era of records in there, and Cass Sheaf, all a bunch of stuff that was like, dance music, and it's so good because it's just like timeless stuff, and like a lot of it got sampled and reused, and I'll hear other people reusing those ideas, but I'm like, So I even heard you know who DJ K Tronada is? K
No.
Tronada. He doesn't go by DJ K Tronada. He goes by K Tronada. But he put out a set of him playing in an elevator recently. He got famous off a Boiler Room mix, but he plays a couple of those Proto Garage songs within his set and like works them with his stuff. And I highly suggest checking out K Tronada though. Like sexy,
Oh yeah,
the
you know what? No,
sexiest
I
music
do.
you can hear. Like he and I played with him before he was anything. Like I played at him at this closed sessions party, and he was playing just on a controller and couldn't, didn't really know CDJs yet. It just started, and he played Me, Myself, and I remember he played some Sugar Hill Gang song, but also early house and like just a crazy array of music. I was like, this guy's just starting out. Like he's going to be something. I went and talked to him. I wish I could have a photograph with him, but so many people that I meet, I don't want to be like that photograph guy. Like, I don't know why.
Right.
I have a lot of stories of like, great artists I've met and hung out with, but zero photographs because
Yeah.
they kind of respect you in a sense. If you just come to them as a person, as a fan. I mean, I got to hang out with Paul McCartney just because I was chill and I was like, hey, let's, let me talk to you for a minute. And like, what a
That's
cool guy. What a cool guy he was,
yeah. And
And the
that's a
same
cool
with
moment. That's an awesome
Orb,
moment.
Alex from the Orb. I spent probably an hour and a half talking to him, just geeking out on how he made stuff and like how he met Flood and how that whole thing happened and the history of it. And he saw my passion and was like, cool, but nary a picture or any, I didn't pull my phone out.
Right. Right. No,
So
I
hot
had my
tip,
own
if you want to hang out with
I
the big guy, leave your phone in your pocket.
100%.
Open up your ears. Listen.
At Breakfast of Champions, I was stage manager for both the stages for the Space Cowboys, and one of our headliners was Z Trip.
Oh wow!
So I'm being, totally sober, being in my adult mode, just make sure things are going smooth. And Zach shows up, and I just mentioned to him, I just said, hey, welcome to the party. Are you aware of who Space Cowboys are? Kind of the party within the party. And he just kind of pauses and he looks at me and he goes, no, but I want to know. He goes, context is important. And I just went, oh, this is awesome. And he had a guy that was setting up his gear. So while he's got his dude is setting up and doing the own sound check and all this. Meanwhile, we're just sitting here and I'm shooting the shit and hearing some amazing stories about how Zach got started when he was like 17 and he was trying to impress some girl. And this is actually, Zach, if this gets back to you, I tried him on Instagram. I would dearly love to have him on the pod. Maybe we'll get him on here. But some of the stories he was telling.
Yeah. His history is amazing. Like what I have a whole Z Trip thing.
Oh yeah,
I first heard of him on Return of the DJ, which was a compilation of scratch music, and there was like one song on there that I would play all the time because I was just like, I love this song. And then he put out Uneasy Listening, and that's like one of the first mashup things that were ever out. Like I didn't really hear a bunch of mashups before. They're called blends. They weren't even called mashups at that time. Everyone called them blends back then. But he was like, that Uneasy Listening with DJ P, he was playing like Kansas Dust in the Wind with like electro funk on top of it. And I brought that CD out to Burning Man, and we would play that in the camp, and people would be coming off the street like, what is this? What is this? And so it was the most requested thing. Like we would just play it over and over and over again because it was like, okay, this is amazing. But that led me to being like, wow, this guy is like just on a different level. And then I read how they made that thing. They used a 4-track and then, built all the levels together and built it over time. It wasn't live. I thought it was live. Like when I first read, I'm like, how are these guys doing this live? I'm blown away. Like, this is crazy. But, it was just a great production work and super influential. I'm sure like it was well before DJ AM was doing this stuff. They were like, Bomb Shelter DJs, I believe they were called, out of Arizona. Emil was another part of their crew. But yeah, he was just amazing. Oh, and Radar. DJ Radar was a part of their crew as well. Until he went to LA. Z Trip did. But yeah, just what an amazing, like he influenced me early on. And then I saw him a couple of years ago with A Skills. They did an A to Z set at Boogaloo in LA. And I remember just being floored. I was like, wow, like everything they're playing is so good. His time, like I'm not a big guy. I don't get on the mic a lot. I'm not into the microphone, but his microphone presence and his crowd control is just next level. I mean, I've seen him do these like rock stadiums, and he's on there scratching rock breaks and yelling at people. Like, what a performer. Like that guy is like just on this, like I'll never reach that level, but I love that because it gives me something to want to be. Same thing when I hear Cut Chemist. Every time I hear Cut Chemist play, I'm like, I go back to the lab and I'm like, okay, what can I take from what I saw Cut Chemist do and like add that into my thing. I have all Cut Chemist's stuff. I have records signed by him. I've met him a couple of times. I toured with Charlie Tuna for a bit in Australia, though he never remembers me when we see him again. Just another white funky DJ. I'm sure he's like whatever, but he's cool. I mean, those guys are amazing. But like that Cut Chemist Charlie Tuna show is amazing. If you can see them, go check them out. That's so good. I can't say how great they are. And Jurassic 5. Let's not forget Jurassic 5. I mean, I'm going to mention a billion
Yeah.
things, but yeah, Jurassic 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I consider him a master of records. Like, there's a couple of those guys out there, and like he's just a master. He's just so good at what he does, and you can tell his passion. And like, I think that makes anyone good. Is like, as you know, that passion, like really, you can hear it. You can hear passion when it's true
Yeah.
passion and love of the art and music and dancing. Those things really shine. When someone's into it just to be kind of like the guy, I can feel that too. Like, yeah, it's okay, but it doesn't move me
Yeah.
in the same way. I'd rather hear someone play really good songs poorly than play really clean and play shitty songs. I don't love hearing clean mixing with bad music. It's not that great.
Yeah, amen to that.
Right.
All right, so we're in our home stretch, Rusty. So I want to give you a chance to go ahead and promote that or anything else. And I did want to ask you, you used to have 3 labels or imprints. Are all 3 of those still going?
No, no, no. I'm so bad at accounting and like doing the right things that I decided that wasn't my forte. So Frank started Super Hi-Fi, and so anything I think should be signed, I send to him. And then Jalapeno Records, I'm good friends with Trevor, so anything that I like in that department, I'll send to him. There was my friends who did Homebreaking Records up in Calgary, Neighbor and those guys. I would kind of push things towards them. Yeah, I just I'm more of an artist and I'm not so great at that side. Now I could probably get into it because you can do AI and do all sorts of stuff to. So who knows? I've been toying around with now that vinyl's coming back too, like doing some small press records and doing something within those realms again. But yeah, and and when you have kids and you're focused on just trying to live and survive, it's like how can I really fit in a label and really make music and DJ and do all the things I want to do. So on that
Yeah.
tip, I kind of pull back. But as far as Patreon goes, I do have a Patreon. It's Rusty B AGFA Funk Weapons. You can look up any of those 3 names and it'll come up. I don't make a ton of money off of it. I have a very small subscriber base, but I don't have. Mine is more. I do a mix a month, and then I do like 2 mashups or an edit, and then there's another tier that has like more edits and mashups in there that I put out. I do have a loyal fan base. So, I mean, the people that have started with me are still with me almost a year later. And it's a great way to force yourself to make something. I force myself every month to make a mix. And sometimes they're not the best mixes. Now I listen back at it. I'm like, ooh, that wasn't so great. Like they didn't have the best, it has great parts. It has great meat. And so, and then, some of the mashups aren't the best, some of them, but I'm always reformulating. I'll go back and be like, I like that, but it could be better. So let me try it again and I'll re-release it. And I get some great feedback off of it, but it's more of a push for me to just do stuff. And,
Yeah.
I have a day job. I work at a hardware store. I'm a manager. I do the inventory control for them. And it's great. I have a great position. I actually didn't think I would like being at a hardware store, but it's kind of it's kind of fun. It's I'm not gonna lie. I have 4 10-hour shifts, and then I have 3 days off, and it affords me time to do music. And it's I get up early. I bring my kids to school every morning, then I go to work, and it's a good foundation for me. I've had those times where I was just DJing and producing, and sometimes I would slack off. I wouldn't quite get into the studio as much as I do. Now, when you have limited time, you're like, okay, I'm going to force myself, because
Make the
I'm
most
a,
of it.
I'm a big proponent of practicing. And even after a 10-hour shift, I will step in there and practice for 30 minutes or just listen through stuff and be like, what am I vibing off of right now? But I highly suggest anyone, even if you don't have a great fan base, just start a Patreon and you can slowly build into it. And then it will force you to put music out. It will force you to do stuff. And if anything, what I do is I take the best of that stuff and then I make a mix and I'll put that on SoundCloud. and that mix will knock. Like the last one, the best Patreon thing I put out, I'm like, I listened to it the other day. I'm like, I actually really enjoy this. This is fun. I like every part of it. It was fun to create, and I added new things in there that weren't on the Patreons, but it's kind of, I'm always digging, and I love podcasts. Like I love listening to your podcast. That gives me ideas. There's also, Tape Notes, which I listen to. I just listened to one with Fred Everything. It's Fred again. Fred Everything was the house artist from back in the day.
Yeah,
but it was cool.
I get those two confused sometimes.
Like, I know we're old school, right? I say it all the time. People are like, Fred Everything. I'm like, okay, it's Fred again.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I denied.
Right?
I wasn't totally into him, and then like I've slowly like been like I understand his genius and what he's doing.
I understand the genius more so than I actually like everything that he does, but I recognize that what he's doing is like, wow, that's pretty badass. I don't always like to listen to the end result, but sir, hats off.
Oh yeah.
Okay, very last question.
Yes.
You mentioned some names already. Who would you nominate to be on the podcast?
Who would I nominate to be on the podcast? Good question. I feel like I've listened. Man, that's a hard one. I would love to hear the Bronx Dogs, DJ Regal and his other partner within Bronx Dogs. He ended up doing all sorts of projects based upon it. What's his name? DJ Touche. Yeah, he was. Yeah, and also
Sound, right? Yeah. What else did he do?
For sure. Featurecast Lee would be amazing. Trevor from Jalapeno Records. I mean, he's got great stories. He's worked with everyone. Those guys in England are really good. There's DJ Raoul from Belgium, Swirl People, and there's a whole story from Belgium. I mean, Soul Wax, Too Many DJs. Oh, yeah. I mean, that would be a dream interview session, right? But those guys are so cool, so influential.
They're crazy talented.
They look like two business guys up there, just crushing it every single time.
Yeah,
those guys are great. And as far as like if you did Australia, they have some great artists that were down there. I'm trying to think of like some early guys. I can't think of their names off the top of my head, but yeah, there's some great guys out of Australia. Dynamo Productions would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I might ask you to open up your Rolodex if you have any intros you can make, but
absolutely.
But otherwise, I'll hit up their Instagrams.
The DJ I was thinking of from earlier was Sam the Man Burns, who passed away, but he was a influential house DJ in DC who'd play the front room at 18th Street or ESL. Yeah, just an amazing guy, amazing community builder, and DJ and legend there. So I did not want to forget to say Sam the Man Burns is like one of the big guys from DC that blew up. But yeah, shout out to my brothers, Fort Knox 5, Queued Up. We had a great community. We still do. I still see them. I hug them. They're my brothers. I love them. And you guys at Space Cowboys are amazing. I love playing your parties. Everyone I feel like is kind of family now when I go and hang out.
Yeah.
I still have a great relationship with Man Cub Chip, and that guy's my brother. So shout out to you guys for doing it. And this podcast is great. I'm going to keep listening and keep supporting.
Thank you. And please thank Frank. And I appreciate you speaking on behalf of yourself and Frank today for All Good Funk Alliance. And I think we did it. I think we're good.
Hell yeah. Keep the funk alive.
Keep the funk alive. All right. Thank you.
Take care, bro.